How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to the MPLS Layer 3 VPN section. What we're going to be focusing on next is our next P2C routing protocol for IPv6, which is going to be OSPFv3. Now, this is supported on XR, so unlike RIP and ISIS, we'll be able to do this on XR as well. So we're going to start on CSR6 and R15, and then we're going to work on XRv9 and R14 to get all of that set up and squared away. So like we've been doing, we'll go ahead and get the P2C routing up and running. So we'll have the customer routes inside of the VRF-aware table on the provider edges, and then we'll work on redistribution. So let's go ahead and get the config kicked off and squared away. So on CSR, I'm going to start on R15, and if I show run pipe include router, we'll see that we already have ISIS running, which we do, ISIS and RIP. So I'm going to leave those in play, and then we'll make whatever modifications we need to make. So I'm going to go to global config, I'll type in interface, and this should be gig 0/0, which it is. Gig 0/0, I'll type in OSPFv3, and I'll say 10, and then I'll specify the area. So IPv6 area 0, and then I'll go to interface loopback 0, same thing, and do that. And then I'm going to go over to CSR6. So actually, let me just validate that real quick. Show OSPFv3 interface brief. We can see that gig 00 and loopback 0 are set up. So we're going to go over to CSR6. We're going to go to the interface and type in interface gig 3, type in OSPFv3 10 IPv6 area 0. And then that should be all we need to do. That's going to enable the peering on the connection. What we're going to have to do then is we have to make sure that this is VRF aware. So what we'll end up doing is router OSPFv3 10 address family IPv6 VRF C1, and then underneath here we'll have to do the redistribution. But let me get the adjacency up and running first. So we'll go ahead and get that guy squared away. So we're still waiting for the adjacency to come online. Show OSPFv3 neighbors, and we are an xstart, or there we go. It just loaded, which is what we want. There's the adjacency, which is what we want. So do show IPv6 route VRF C1, and we should see a OSPF route right here, right there. So you'll notice that the /128, so the loopback itself, the host route, the loopback, is coming through. So we'll have to go in there and modify the loopback information on CSR or on router 15. Let me go get the configuration for XRv9 and R14 squared away first. So we'll go to global config. We'll type in on interface gig 0/0. We'll type in OSPFv3 10 IPv6 area 0 interface loopback 0. Same command. Then we'll go on to XRv9. We'll go to global config, router OSPFv3 10 VRF C1 address family interface, or no, sorry, area 0 interface gig 0/0/0/0/2, and we're going to go ahead and commit the config. So that'll bring the OSPFv3 config up on that. So if we go to R14, we should see an adjacency pop off here in just a moment. Do show OSPFv3 neighbor, and right now we're in the xstart mode. Once we get past the xstart, we should have an adjacency with XRv9, and that will pop off, and there it goes. So now we have an adjacency. If we go back to XRv9 and do show route VRF C1, we should see, oh, I'm sorry, we won't do that because let me go to the root. Do show run router static. Let me go ahead and just remove that. I forgot that that was actually in place still. My apologies. we're going to go ahead and do show run. So momentarily we should see the route, show route, oh, sorry, that's IPv4. Route VRFC1, and then we need to look at IPv6, and there we go. So that was my fault. So here we have the /128 coming across, so we have that. So now that we have that in play, we're going to go back over to CSR6, and I'm going to type in, I believe, is PWD supported here? It is not. So because we're underneath the address family, we need to be able to redistribute BGP 100, and then since we are in IPv6, we can just hit the enter key. And what we're going to do then is router BGP 100, address family IPv6 VRFC1, redistribute OSPF process 10, and then we have to match on specific routes. Now, by default, anything external to OSPF doesn't get redistributed, so we have to take that into consideration. We don't have anything external, so we don't really have to worry about that. But we will have to do, I usually will match the internal, and then I'll do the include connected and hit the enter key. So that'll be that config. Now, assuming that I've done everything correctly, do show BGP VPNv6 unicast all. I should see 10:1:15/ I see them both coming in, but you'll notice that this has a metric of 20, this has a metric of 1. So the 128, this particular entry is coming from OSPF, okay? Now to fix that on R15, we have to go type in interface loopback 0, OSPFv3 network type is going to be point to point. Okay, then we go back over to CSR6 and we do a do show IPv6 route, and VRFC1. Now we'll see just the /64 coming through. That means if we do this command again, now we'll see just the /64 route showing up in the prefix via OSPF. So keep that in mind. Now, with that being said, if we go over to XRV9, we now need to go underneath router OSPFv3 10, VRFC1, address family, area 0, address family. Where's redistribute? Okay, no, it's redistribution. Oh, you know what? I need to get out of the area. Redistribution will be down there. So redistribute BGP 100, and I'm just going to hit the enter key. That's as far as I need to take it. And then I'm going to type in router BGP 100, address family IPv6. No, I'm in XRV9 here. So it's going to be VRFC1, address family IPv6 unicast. And we're going to type in redistribute OSPFv3 10, and then we'll say match internal, and that should be all we need to worry about. Now, if we had external routes, we'd have to match on those as well. So when might that come into play? Well, let's say for example, if R14 had an internet circuit and we wanted to redistribute a default route into OSPFv3 to make sure that got propagated across the wire to R15, we'd have to make sure that the OSPFv2 route would get injected in here on XRV9, and then it would get propagated. So we'd have to match external as well. We don't have to do that right now because we're not worried about that. So we're going to go ahead and type in commit, and that should be all I need to do. If we go back, if we do show BGP VPNv6 unicast, we should see the 14 route, or we should see 15, which we do. And if we go back to R14 and we type in interface loopback 0 and type in OSPFv3 network type of point to point, and then go back to XRV9, we should see now that route coming through as just a /64. So now if I go to R15 and do show IPv6 route, I should see this guy showing up, which I do. I see both routes coming through, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. So I have my reachability in play. But here's the kicker though. Notice that the OSPFv3 routes are coming through. Let's go take a look at CSR6 and see what's going on here. Let's go ahead and do a let's do a show BGP VPNv6 unicast all and look at these prefixes. So I'm going to look at the route coming from 14. I'm going to look at that, and you'll notice that I have not a lot going on in here, right? So I have it being redistributed and things like that. All of that looks pretty square and straightforward. However, if I go over to XRV9, notice you're not seeing any domain ID or anything like that coming through. It's a little misleading as to what's actually happening. Go to XRV9 and we do the same thing. And we look at, say, the route from 15. Look at this guy right here. Right, it says network not until, oh, that's because I didn't do unicast VRFC1 and then do that. So notice how this guy has a lot more information in here. We got at least the OSPF router ID, the route type, and things like that. So it's a little bit more information. Notice that the domain ID is not set. So right now, the way we're learning this is the route's coming across the wire, but there's no domain ID. So that's why we see it as external type routes. So if we were to go to CSR6 and type in global config, router OSPFv3 10, and then address family IPv6 VRFC1, there is no, the domain ID is right here. Domain ID type is going to be 0005. And then the value that we could associate to that, and the hex string, if you look back over here on 9, there really is no value in here for us to reference. So this is one of those times where you would have to come up with something. So this is going to, oops, wrong device. So here it says a 6-octet domain ID extended community value. If we look up here, there really is nothing to reference, right? So I'll come in here and we have 6 octets. So I'll throw something in just to see if it'll take. And I'll do 10. And it says, so it says the domain ID must be at least 6 octets. So we're 12 bits. So we have, let's see here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'll just go in here and make this something like that. I'll go ahead and I'll commit this. Or I'm sorry, I don't need to commit on iOS. That's funny. So do show BGP VPNv6 unicast all. And if I hit the up arrow and I grab this particular prefix, actually no, not that one. I want to do 14. Right, so we take a look at that, then we take a look at this one. Notice how the domain ID is being propagated now. So now if we go and do the same thing, router OSPFv3 10 VRFC1 area 0 domain ID or exit out. Domain ID is going to be type 0005. The value will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 0, and commit that. We go back over to CSR6, we hit the up arrow, and after that propagates, if we look back over at 15 and we take a look at the routing table, you'll notice after a certain period of time or so, let's take a look at XRV9 real quick. Show BGP VPNv6 unicast all, or unicast VRFC1. If we look at the traffic from 15, we can see the domain ID is being propagated, which is good. If we look over at 6, the domain ID is not being propagated. So show BGP VPN v6 unicast all. Right, we have that route coming across. We look at this more specifically. It is not being propagated. So there's not much at this point here we can really do. The extended community values that we've tried to associate are there. So show run section BGP, or I'm sorry, OSPF. We can see we're trying to do the domain ID value here. If we look over here on XRB9 and show run router OSPFv3, we can see we're trying to do the domain ID for that. And as far as we're concerned, the propagation, it doesn't appear to be being propagated over here to this side. So at the end of the day, there's really not much more I can do in terms of what's being propagated. And am I worried about it? Not really. Although it would be nice for the routes to appear as though they're coming from the same autonomous system, or I should say the same area. So they're inter area versus external type 2. But at this point, I would have to go and modify the OSPF process IDs, which technically shouldn't matter. Because the domain ID is not being propagated. The only thing that I haven't done is try to clear BGP and try to get it to resynchronize, but I'm not terribly concerned about it. So at this point, we're squared away and ready to go. So the propagation now we just need to validate. So now we can jump out of here and do a show IPv6 route, and we can try to do a trace route to via IPv6 to 10:1:14:14 from 15. Yes, we want to make it numeric and go all the way down. So now we know it's going to go through an XR box, which is fine. We know that's going to end up happening. There's not much we can do about that. So once we get a little further along, we'll be in good shape. It'll go through another XR box, and eventually it'll drop off in R14. The point being we have is reachability. Is it a big deal that it doesn't show up as the right type of route? Theoretically speaking, no, it doesn't. But the reason why on both sides that it looks like it's an external route is because the domain ID is not being propagated. For whatever reason, the domain ID is not being sent. So because it's not being sent, we find ourselves in a situation where when traffic gets redistributed from BGP back into OSPF, since the domain ID is not the same or not being propagated, therefore the routes are going, well, I can't validate that you came from the right process ID, so therefore I can't propagate any information for you, therefore you're going to be external. So this could cause some traffic engineering issues, especially if you've got a very unique OSPF domain, but unless you're really, really specific on how you deploy OSPF, most of the time this should be okay. Unless you've got a lot of stub areas configured on the inside of your network. But at that point, you probably wouldn't need to do anything because you'd have a static route. You'd probably be propagating a default route anyway, and then you would let the default route get you to a point in which OSPF would take over and you would route via longest match. So take it for what it is. I'm not too terribly concerned about it. So with that being said, that's where we are. We have propagation, the routing is happening, and everything else looks pretty good. Until next time, guys, thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.